Welcome to Beth's Happy Home. I've recently discontinued writing my Americana column for the newspaper so that I could concentrate on other things. But as a historical fiction writer and a columnist, I have learned to do very careful research. And the last few days, I have been researching fats and oils, and I now know more than I ever have use for of knowledge of fats and oils. But there are some really important and interesting things that I have learned. First thing that we all need to understand is that we need fats and oils from our diet. But there is a huge range of the type of fats and oils that we want to take into our bodies, all the way from very healthful oils, and well, they are oils in that case, and very harmful oils and fats that we can put into our diet, or should take out of our diet, actually. Anyway, so let's talk about those a little bit. About the turn of the century, in 1902, a German scientist figured out how to hydrogenate oils, and what that means is that he took an unsaturated oil, like it was cottonseed oil, and he forced hydrogen atoms into that fatty chain, and he found that it crystallized. It made it so that it was solid at room temperature. And it also made it so stable that you could put it into baked goods and they would stay fresh for a long, long time, much longer than ones that used liquid oils. And so he marketed it to Procter & Gamble, and they shortened the name crystallized cottonseed oil to Crisco. And so that's where shortening was born. A few decades later, we learned that saturated fats were not good for us in great volume. And so the food industry marketed margarine as a wonderful substitute because it was made from vegetable oils. However, they had been hydrogenated, and so any beneficial properties that they had as vegetable oils had been taken away and actually made much worse than a saturated fat from a natural source by adding that extra hydrogen. And they had created what's called a trans fat. Trans fat is so harmful to the body that it's actually been banned in the United States. As of 2019, no food producer can include more than 0.5 gram per serving of trans fats. But there's a little catch that you need to know, and this is why it's still significant, that they can list as 0 trans fats if it has 0.5 gram or less per serving. But the studies have shown that even a tiny amount of trans fat in your body can be harmful, and so should be avoided. So shortening, which is solid at room temperature because it's saturated, is not good for you. However, even the shortening companies that make the shortening have had to take the trans fat out of it. So they've reformulated the shortening so that they have much less trans fat, and they have achieved a solid state at room temperature using different methods, which I don't know exactly how they've done that. So they're not as bad as they used to be, but they do still contain some trans fats in shortening. In fact, this one listed as 0, but the third ingredient is hydrogenated palm oil. So there you go. Similar to the trans fats are the saturated fats, and now they are not quite as bad, but they do produce higher cholesterol in your body. Your body processes them by raising both the bad cholesterol and by suppressing the good cholesterol. And so fats like coconut oil that are solid at room temperature because they are saturated are going to have that same inflammatory effect as the trans fats, and they're going to also raise your cholesterol. The coconut oil industry has done a wonderful job of laundering their reputation because it's a saturated fat. Coconut oil is 97% saturated fat and only 1% of monounsaturated fat. So it is not a healthful fat. And I looked and focused on coconut oil to see if there was any study that kind of redeemed it. And there were a couple of them where they commented, we don't really have enough evidence to prove that it causes high cholesterol, but we do have enough evidence to prove that if you substitute a healthful oil, that your risk of heart disease and inflammation goes way down. It does have its place, however, and that is that it is a good thing to add to cosmetics. And if you like to make your own homemade cosmetics, or as a cold cream, coconut oil actually does a really good job of dissolving makeup, and it leaves your skin nice and soft. And so, and I use it for that, and I keep it for that because it's good on the skin, but it doesn't belong inside your body. Okay, so these two are kind of in the bad category. They're not kind of, they are in the not good for you category. We're going to push them over here, except this one it's redeemed by its cosmetic type effects. Next we have butter. Now butter is about half saturated fat, and the other half is monounsaturated fats, and a little tiny bit of polyunsaturated fats. So if you have a choice between butter and coconut oil, you're better off to choose butter. The problem is with butter is that it also contains cholesterol because it is derived from an animal product. Now, no vegetable oil of any kind is going to have cholesterol in it because vegetables don't produce cholesterol, but animal bodies do. And so animal fats are going to have cholesterol in them. Even your body makes its own cholesterol. And the problem is that it makes more than what you actually need. Cholesterol does have a function in your body. You don't eliminate it to zero, but your body makes enough on its own. So it's okay to have butter sometimes, but limit it very carefully. The Food and Drug Administration recommends that you limit it to 6% of your daily intake of calories per day. Any saturated fat, that is. The way that they measure it is 1 tablespoon of any of these is considered a serving, and butter is somewhat lower calorie because it has other ingredients in it than these other pure oils. These are pure fat, not peanut butter, but these other ones are pure fat, and so butter is slightly lower calorie per tablespoon, but it still has 100 calories per tablespoon, so it isn't something that you should eat a lot of. One thing I forgot to mention is the cost. Now, the shortening costs about 4 cents per ounce. The coconut oil costs about 21 cents per ounce, so it's more than 5 times as expensive. And the butter costs 19 cents per ounce. So butter is cheaper than coconut oil. If you're using it as a condiment, it's worth it to use the butter in my mind, because you're not getting any benefit, any health benefit by having so much saturated fat. And I put the peanut butter out here just because this is very high in fat, although a serving of peanut butter contains 3.5 grams of protein, and it has other things in it as well, so it isn't a pure fat. But I often will substitute peanut butter for some of in cookie recipes and muffin recipes and things like that as some of the fat, and it ups the protein, and it has that good mouthfeel that you get from adding other fats, but it cuts down on the amount of fat that the recipe actually has by, if it calls for a full, cube of butter or something like that, I might cut it half butter, half peanut butter. That's just a suggestion. Peanut butter has per serving has 1 gram of saturated fat, so it's relatively low in saturated fat. And peanut oil is a healthful oil, so that's just. But in this peanut butter, you're also getting extra sugar and salt, which you don't get in the organic ones, but you get a smoother product in this because it's been. There is some hydrogenated oil in here. So those are those two. And now we'll move from these that all have some saturated fat or hydrogenated fat in them, and we'll move to these oils, which are kind of the middle grade oils. Now, believe it or not, avocado oil actually fits more with this category than in the highly beneficial category. And the reason is because avocado oil is rather high in saturated fats. But I'm going to talk first about this vegetable oil. Vegetable oils can be a blend of several different kinds of oil, but in this case, the vegetable oil is pure soybean oil. Soybean oil costs 4 cents an ounce, and it has a very light, almost tasteless flavor. Just tastes mildly oily, and so its composition: 61% polyunsaturated, 24% monounsaturated, but 15% of saturated fat. And so it isn't enough to make it solid at room temperature, but it is enough to give it a very high smoke point, which means that soybean oil is going to be a superior oil to cook with at a high temperature. So if you're going to be frying something, an oil with a high smoke point is not going to give off the compounds that are not good for you as quickly as some of these more delicate oils that give off those unfavorable compounds at a lower temperature. Both avocado oil and soybean oil have a high smoke point, so if you're going to fry, you're better off to use either avocado or soybean oil. The difference is, so for avocado oil, you might think that it's just the Cadillac of oils. That was kind of the way that I expected to find it. And it does have a very similar monounsaturated content to olive oil. However, it has only 13% of the polyunsaturated fats, which are also beneficial, and they are essential to your health because your body can't make them itself, and so you have to take it in your diet. So it's relatively low in relation to some of these others that we're going to talk about, and it also has 12% of saturated fat. Therefore, that's why it has the higher smoke point, because it has higher saturated fat. A couple of studies that I saw, it may have just been one, but they were advocating mixing these two oils because they kind of balance each other out. And when you mix this one, the least expensive oil, with this one, the most expensive oil, you get a product that has 40% monounsaturated fat, 37% polyunsaturated fat, and 13% saturated fat. And so the mono and the poly are balanced out better, but you still have a pretty high percentage of the of the saturated fat. And there's another oil that has a better profile than that all by itself. And the good news is it's also very inexpensive. So the one thing that you should note is that avocado oil also has omega-3 fatty acids. So does soybean oil, as a matter of fact. These two oils together make a pretty good oil, especially for frying. Other vegetable oils include safflower oil, sunflower oil. Sunflower oil actually is high in omega-3 acids too. Fatty acids, that is, and sunflower oil is also very high in vitamin E, and so that's another little interesting thing. But it's kind of hard to find. I couldn't find any of it in Walmart. They don't carry pure sunflower oil, and you can buy it online. And the benefit of vitamin E is that surgeons often advocate administering oil, vitamin E oil, like sunflower, on a scar, because it will help to diminish it and help the body to break down the scar tissue and make it look much less noticeable. So one other benefit of soybean oil is that it's very high in vitamin K. Now, vitamin K is associated with blood clotting, necessary vitamin for blood clotting. It's also associated with bone metabolism. So in order to create bones, your body needs vitamin K. Well, your body makes vitamin K in your gut. So if you have a healthy gut biosphere by eating yogurt regularly and replenishing those things that might be killed off by some of the unhealthful things that you eat, this adds a little bit of extra vitamin K. In fact, it's considered a good source, which means it has between 10 and 19% of your recommended daily allowance. And that's soybean oil that we're talking about, the least expensive oil. And the most expensive oil of all of these oils is avocado oil. It costs 33 cents an ounce. For many years, olive oil has been considered to be the very best of the best, you know, the best possible oil that you could use. And it does have several very good benefits. So here's the analysis of it. Olive oil has 70 to 80% monounsaturated fats. So that's very high monounsaturated fats. It has 15% to 20% of polyunsaturated fats, and it has 7 to 10% of saturated fats. The one catch is that some of the nutrients are lost when you cook at a high heat, and so you're not going to receive the same benefits from having olive oil that has been fried, or you fried something in it, as you are if you're eating it raw. The raw is going to give you the whole benefit. This is refined olive oil, so it is not extra virgin. It has been processed. It is somewhat less expensive, ounce for ounce, than the extra virgin olive oil, but the difference is not significant enough to justify the difference in the benefits of having the extra virgin olive oil, because the extra virgin olive oil has not been heated, and therefore it has all of its beneficial properties. They contain omega-3 fatty acids, and as with the mono and poly unsaturated fats, you're going to have all the heart benefits that you're going to get from olive and from the soybean oil, lowering your overall cholesterol. Isn't it interesting that cholesterol, which is a protein and a fat that have been linked together chemically in your body, they actually are benefited by having the unsaturated fats in your body, in your diet. That's interesting to me. They are also going to have the anti-inflammatory quality. These are, since they are relatively low in saturated fats, they are going to be beneficial. But now it brings me to the irony of all of this information, and that is that canola oil, which really and truly is about the most beneficial, in many ways, the best oil that you can have nutritionally, which doesn't mean that you only want to have it on hand, because it does have a couple of drawbacks. But canola oil is 57% monounsaturated fat, so it's not as high as in the monounsaturated fat as olive oil, but it has 31% of the polyunsaturated fats, which have different benefits, different uses in your body, including, which all of these have polyunsaturated fats in them, but that's necessary for cell walls to be built, and it also is necessary for the sheath of a nerve. So in order to produce those types of tissues, you have to have these essential fats in your diet, poly and mono unsaturated fats. So canola has 57% monounsaturated, 31% polyunsaturated, but it has the lowest amount of saturated fat in it, with only 6%. So with 6% of saturated fat, if you're going to have a raw oil, this one is going to be the best because it's going to give you the least saturated fat. And so the drawback is that saturated fat raises the smoke point, or the cooking point, where it starts to produce things that are not good for your body. And so if you're going to be frying, you're better off to use the olive oil. And if you're going to be eating it raw, you're better off to be using the canola oil because it has less saturated fat. Well, why would you want to keep olive oil on hand when it's more expensive? And the answer is that olive oil, it has a very distinct flavor, which is not true of canola oil, and it's not true of soybean oil or even avocado oil. There's avocado oil from my taste buds, has an indistinguishable flavor. It just tastes like a very mild oil. So I'll pour a little bit of, this is the extra virgin olive oil that is, I poured right here. You can see it's a bright yellow color. This is the more processed olive oil. It's just called a refined oil. And you can see, compared side by side, that the more processed oil is a lighter color, and it also has a more mild flavor. It still has this more refined oil does have a flavor, a distinct olive oil flavor, but it isn't as strong. This one that is the extra virgin is going to have a faintly bitter aftertaste, and it even has a little bit of an afterburn in your throat, which is not really present with the processed oil. I'm going to pour out some of this avocado oil for you to see. So you can see it has a faint yellowish tinge. And I'll add some of this soybean vegetable oil. Compare those straight across. As I'm going forward and I'm making purchases, I'm going to keep mostly canola oil on hand for cooking and baking. I'm also going to keep some of this vegetable oil on hand for frying, soybean oil specifically. I am going to try to find some sunflower oil if I have a scar that I want to reduce. I'm going to use coconut oil in my cosmetics and for cleaning my face as a cold cream. And I'm going to use olive oil because I enjoy the flavor, and it's a very healthful oil. And it's going to give me omega-3s, and it's going to give me other beneficial fatty acids that are a little bit different profile in each of these beneficial oils, but it's expensive, and so consequently I'm going to serve it on a salad. I'm going to serve it with bread. I'm going to serve it where I can enjoy the flavor, because compared to canola oil, there's no sense in pouring it into something where you can't taste it, because you're actually going to usually have a more beneficial product by using canola oil. So those are my conclusions, and if you want to comment, I invite you to do some research and eliminate any source that is selling something, because all of the studies that I used to come up with this information were not, they were scientific studies. They were done by medical hospitals, medical schools, research centers, where they're not selling anything. They're just trying to find out what the truth is. So I'd be interested to know what your favorite oil is and how you use the different oils, especially olive oil. I think that it's a delicious oil, and so it has a place in everybody's diet, and it's kind of a foundation of the Mediterranean diet. But as Americans, we can substitute the much less expensive canola oil, in cases where we're not going to be able to taste the oil particularly anyway. So those are my conclusions, and I won't be buying avocado oil again. It isn't, compared to olive oil, it's not, it doesn't have anything that's unique enough. I like to eat raw avocado, and so I'll get my avocado benefits from eating fresh avocados. And I will have to reconsider my Thanksgiving pie crust recipe that calls for shortening, because after learning so much about trans fats, I think I am convinced that it's better to just not have them ever under any circumstances. So that's the skinny on fats. Thanks for watching.